Welcome to Meet, Act, and Part, a Masonic podcast hosted by Midnight Freemasons. Greg Knott, Darin Larners, Todd Vriesen, and Bill Hostler.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Meet, Act, and Part. Hey, we're already at episode 42. You'll believe that? Meditations of Flawed Freemasons. I don't know, something like that. That's going to be our title. We decided to have a little fun this episode and talk about a variety of things as we're getting towards the end of the year. Anyway, let's introduce ourselves. My name is Greg Knott, one of your hosts.
And I'm Bill Hostler, and I'm one of your hosts.
And I'm Darin Laners.
Yeah, Darin's also my intern, but we're going to save that for our own special episode about internships.
I think you should just break it open. I don't know that the normal listener knows the story behind me being your intern, Greg, so I think now that you breached the topic, just go with it.
Well, and I guess since we're talking about flawed Freemasons, that's probably a very appropriate topic. So, Darin has been a Freemason for 10 or 11 years now, Darin. I can't remember. You just passed
I just passed my 10th anniversary being
Okay.
raised on the 28th of November.
So, for those 10 years, and actually a few years before that, though I'm not sure he and I really labeled it as such, Darin has been my intern. Now, you got to wonder, how can somebody be so inept to be the intern for 10 years? But Darin has filled that role flawlessly. And so it kind of began when he and I were in Cub Scouts as leaders, and Darin would help on various things. And then he was one of the guys that filled out a petition when he was still a scout leader for the lodge, and he just kept helping. And at some point in time, early, I think it's been quite a while, Darin, we coined you as my intern. And one of the funny things is Darin always thought he'd get out of it, but then a couple of our other brothers in Ogden Lodge, Denver Phelps and Steve Hooper, kind of have those same roles. And Darin, what was your observation about Hoop?
My observation about Brother Hooper was that he is a Denver Phelps intern. So I then saw that I would be, as you had continued to remind me perpetually, your intern, Greg.
Yeah, so it's worked out extremely well from my point of view. And so I would encourage any Freemason, if you can find an intern, and Darin's intern for life, to go ahead and sign him up. It's there's no cost. You provide a little bit of guidance. Every once in a while, I give Darin a beer, and he just performs almost flawlessly. So, Darin the intern.
Well, and the funny thing is that when he does mess up, it's been a joke among the Midnight Freemasons that when Darin does mess up, that he gets put in Masonic jail for a certain amount of
Yes,
time.
that's right, Bill. I'm glad you brought that up. One time, Darin and I went to this little town, and they were moving an old printing press. Doesn't everybody go to a little town and watch a moving printing press on a Saturday afternoon? Well, Darin and I did, but in this town, the town jail, which was a 1-cell or 2-cell cage, still existed. And so I thought it was appropriate that we put Darin in jail. And of course, I took a picture of it. And so, as Bill indicated, that's been sort of our Midnight Freemason joke, that when Darin is underperforming, he gets put in Masonic jail.
I would say not only underperforming when I write about topics that, let's just say, cause Freemasons to be oversensitive, I get put in Masonic jail. So I'm usually there quite often, I think.
You know, it almost makes me think we should probably sue Facebook, because we probably originated the idea of going to jail in that aspect before they did. So we were actually pioneers in this. May not have known it, but I think Facebook owes us something, I'm sure.
You'll have to sue their parent company, Meta, now, Greg.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So anyway, so Darin's the intern. You know, you've all heard of probably Mike the intern from Masonic Roundtable and others. So it's Darin the intern, though we don't, he's a different type of intern than Mike was. So, but anyway, we appreciate it. We have a good time with it. And Darin and I were talking earlier today. I said, we need to have some fun at meetings again. It's time to laugh. The last couple of years have been serious, have been tough on everybody. And so tomorrow night, St. Joe Lodge meeting, at least as we record this, we're going to meet. And I've heard that Santa Claus and one of his elves are going to show up. So we're going to have a little bit of fun with Santa and the elf. And I'll bet our internet guru, Bill Hostler, will be able to find some pictures of Santa and the elf. And they'll probably be on our Facebook page within a few days.
I've already got feelers out for it going right now. I'm sure I'll have them very soon.
That's good. Okay, so let's laugh. Let's have a little bit of fun. Again, this is one of our less scripted episodes, and just going to talk about some things actually Darin and Bill are involved with coming up. Really some big news, and I'm going to start with Bill. Bill, I didn't even know until I saw it on a Facebook post. I know you had alluded to it earlier, but you have been working on putting a book together, and you kind of did a pre-announcement this week on Facebook, and I saw what looked like a book cover. And if you wouldn't mind, why don't you tell us the name of the book and what that focus is?
Okay, well, you heard it here first, folks. Yeah, actually, ever since I've started writing, I've had many people ask me to write a book, and probably a lot more that asked me not to. But I decided it's finally time that I should take bull by the horns and go ahead and do it. And so what I've done is I wrote a compilation of a lot of the things that I've written over the years. Some of them from the Midnight Freemasons, some of them has been in print. And I've kind of compilated them together and put them in the form of a book, and it's going to be called Meditations of a Flawed Ashlar. We went through several different ideas for titles. It was going to be the scribblings and meanderings of a crazy man and different things like that. We decided to go a little more normal. But as it goes right now, it should be released either by this Friday at the end of this taping or by the next Monday. But they should definitely be ready for Christmas. Just keep that in mind. And right now it's going to be put out in paperback and paperback and Kindle. And I'm pretty pleased. It's been something I've thought about for a long time, and it's really strange, the idea of me being a published author. I mean, I've been published in Masonic magazines all over the world, and that's a neat feeling in itself. To actually have a book in your hand with your name on it, it's just mind-blowing. I know that some people like RJ, he's had lots of them, but it just blows my mind, and I really hope that people enjoy it. And I don't know what to say. I want to thank everybody in advance who does purchase it.
So, Bill, let me ask you the basics first. How can one purchase the book once it's available? Will it be on Amazon, or what will be the
As it stands right now, it's just going to be on Amazon and in the Amazon store and in the Kindle store. And I think I'm going to have links on my website, uponthesquare.com, and on my writer's page on Facebook. So, there'll be many of avenues to be able to pick it up. So, and I'm going to definitely make sure that people can see it on social media. So it definitely will be out there.
Bill, I think it's awesome. And in prior episodes, it's been a while. I think one of the conversations we were having was about the 50-year Mason series at the time. But one of the things you talked about was you never had envisioned yourself as an author, but yet people kept encouraging you, coaching you, pulling it out of you. And then all of a sudden it's like, you know what? I do have some talent. You may not be the next Dan Brown, but so what? You've worked on it. You've gotten better. You're expressing your thoughts. You're doing, putting creative ideas on there, and the ability to come that far to put it into a book format that's available for worldwide distribution. I think it's awesome. I want to tell you, I'm proud of you. I think it's just great to see you doing that, and I think you ought to be commended for how far you've come on that.
Well, thanks, Greg. It's mind-blowing. And yeah, I never would have dreamed of anything like this. If you'd have told me I was going to be an author 10 years ago, I would have never believed it. And it blows me away. I was going to say something, but it's just completely taken me off this is the first time I really talked about it in public. And so I know that eventually, it'll become old hat. But now this doesn't include the 50-year member series. I have an idea. I'm going to have a whole compilation of the 50-year member series, plus some that I haven't published. And I think when it's time to actually end the 50-year member series, I'm going to put that in book form, and so you'll be able to read the ending in the book. I know how it's going to end. I just haven't gotten to the point where I'm ready to basically put it to bed yet. I think maybe the old man and Pudge still have a few stories to tell, but when that time comes, they're going to tell their final story in book form.
Yeah, I think it's cool. And I guess one of the questions I would have for you, because you've accomplished something that I've thought about, I can't tell you how many times. I just haven't sat down to do it, is to try to do one of these as well. But what finally kind of kicked you off the ledge, and then what kind of process did you have to go through in terms of, putting it together? Hoops did you have to go through, et cetera? Describe a little bit about how you got to here we are right at the point of the release of it.
Well, surprisingly, the hardest thing was making sure I had plenty of content to fill a book, because I hadn't been writing that long when people started asking me. I talked to a friend of mine in England who works for the Square magazine, Pippa Folks, and she told me, well, you have to have so many pages that, available to actually make it worthwhile. And it's like, well, geez, I don't know if I'll ever have that many. So I've just been working on it for all these years and just kind of stowing things away. And Kindle/Amazon really makes it easy to write a book. You go over there, you sign up for Kindle Direct Publishing, and they have these templates to where you can take all your content and you place it within these templates. And then if you can find somebody who is a good editor, a book editor, they can go up and they can take it and make sure it fits within these templates, and so it looks correct. And if you find an editor who can make sure that the spelling is correct and that it's formatted correctly, that it looks good, it looks professional, and that it is ready to be published. And then you figure out what you want to do for the cover. And it took me a long time to figure out what I wanted to do for the cover, because it seemed like for the longest time, everybody put out a Masonic book, they just had the same basic idea. They'd take a black cover with a square and compass in it. And I just thought, that just looks so silly, and it just looks like everybody else has done. I want something different. And it took me forever to finally figure it out. And then I realized one day what I wanted to do. And so I talked to some brethren back in my hometown in Fort Wayne, and I asked them if they would go over and take photographs of the Corinthian room of the Fort Wayne Masonic Temple. That's the temple. That's the room that I was raised in, that I served as master of my lodge. And I took my past master's degree in that room. I took a lot of my Yorkright degrees in that room. And I thought that was the room that I wanted to feature as my cover. And it's also, in a way, kind of interesting, because that was also the same room that Brother Dave Thomas, the founder of Wendy's, took his degrees in with Salty Bayless Lodge. We can't compare each other. I mean, he's a lot more famous than I'll ever be. But I still think it was a perfect picture for the front of that cover. And I'm really amazed how well that turned out, that the picture was perfect that they took. And they gave me the option of several of them, and I took what I thought was the best one. And so I turned that into somebody who does photo covers for a living, and they made this beautiful cover. And I placed that with the Kindle and uploaded everything, and it just a little bit of working on it, and it's going to be placed on sale here pretty soon once once it's reviewed, and make sure that it's they can say that, well, it's placed correctly, that there's nothing nefarious about it, and that you're not doing anything wrong. And then once they realize that you're doing what you say you're doing, and that you're not writing anything bad in it, then it'll be available for sale.
Yeah, that's awesome. The cover does look fantastic. If anybody wants to take a preview of it, if you go to Bill Hostler PM on Facebook, you will find it. And he's got both the bound cover version and the Kindle version cover that you can see. And that Corinthian Lodge room is beautiful. That it's got a dark blue carpet that to me makes it pop. And so, Bill, I think you did a great job on picking that cover.
Yeah, that room it's one of the most beautiful I've ever seen. It's got 20-foot high ceilings. It's 60 foot long by 40 foot wide. And, it's 100 years old here pretty soon. And I've never seen many lodge rooms I guess maybe I'm a little biased, but I've never seen many lodge rooms that actually can match it. Other than maybe a Grand Lodge building in some of these major cities. But it'll always be my mother lodge home. And so it's always going to have a special place in my heart no matter what lodge I belong to. But yeah, I thought it was the perfect place to have on my cover.
Yeah, looks great. And I got to ask you, you do like hamburgers though, right?
Oh yeah. In fact, it's so funny because right across the alley from the Masonic Temple is a Wendy's. which I always thought was kind of funny.
Oh, okay.
When I worked there as manager of the temple, I would cross the alley and I'd go have lunch there. And there was a story that they wanted to honor Brother Thomas in the building one night. They had this great big party and they had catered in food and stuff, and Dave was there, and they had Dee Malay and Job's daughters serving the food. And I mean, they're 14, 15-year-old kids. And Dave went up and he thanked all these kids for doing their job, doing their part. And he asked me, he says, well, have you guys eaten tonight? They go, well, no, we haven't. They didn't leave them anything to eat. He said, so he took all these kids across out through the kitchen, down the stairs, across the alley, over to the Wendy's across this alley. And he walked in and he talked to the manager. He said, you give these kids whatever they want to eat, put them on my tab. And I can about imagine that manager on duty at that time, he about freaked. I can just about imagine to have Dave Thomas just walk in out of the blue into his store and then said, hey, give these kids anything they wanted. But I thought, that just says what kind of man that, what he was,
Yeah.
But, there's a lot of people in that town that remember Dave Thomas and said he was a great man.
Yeah, he's got a great story that we should go into sometime, but he was a very generous person, and his legacy, if you go into Wendy's, they're still telling his story. And so I think part of there's probably a Wendy's Foundation or a Dave Thomas Foundation that's still, making impact in the world. So anyway, I knew you had something in common with him, and that had to be the hamburgers, because I like Wendy's hamburgers too.
Well, if you look at me, you can tell I've ate a hamburger or two.
I thought you were a vegan, Bill, all these years, and now I find out the hard way.
Well, I'm a social vegan. I don't like to meet anybody, so it's kind of the same thing.
That'll make those book signings really awkward, Bill.
Okay, so Bill's book, Meditations of a Flawed Ashlar, will be available soon on Amazon in both print form and Kindle form. And again, you can go to Facebook on his page and take a look. And like he said, when he gets everything in the 100% category and it's going to be released, he'll do a lot of social media to publicize that. So again, Bill, from Meat Act and Part, from Midnight Freemasons, and from just frankly two of your Masonic buddies, congratulations on a
Thanks, guys. Book. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. And Bill, if I can share, Greg, I've actually read Bill's book, and it is really a great work from the heart. Bill put a lot of the love and his humor into it, and I think it's a great read, and I encourage anybody who's a Freemason, from a novice to the most experienced Freemason. I think there's some lessons to be learned in the book, and the way Bill presents them with some of his, I believe some of the stories are fiction, Bill. Maybe you can correct me. Maybe they're not, but the way that you present some of the lessons, I think are really, really special. So I think you knocked this one out of the park.
No, some are fiction. Yeah, some are fiction. Some are just my jaundiced and twisted view of the world.
I wouldn't expect anything less, Bill. So good job. So, all right. So that's the first kind of big announcement. The second is Darin is involved as one of the speakers at the Double Eagle Con, which is coming up in Chicago on, I believe, December 18th. And it's got really a great lineup of speakers, including Darin, though Darin, he, doesn't like to tout his own horn very much, but we can do that because this is our podcast. And Darin, if you don't mind, why don't you tell us a little bit about the event, what you're speaking on, and then we'll unpeel it from there.
Okay, so a few months ago, our good friend Robert Johnson asked me if I would be willing to speak at an event at the Valley Chicago, and didn't really give me much more detail than that. And lo and behold, they were putting together this Double Eagle Con, and it's a one-of-a-kind event in my mind, because all of the speakers are going to be speaking on topics that are Scottish Rite centric, and we'll have both jurisdictions represented there. We'll have speakers like Michael Pohl, Chuck Dunning, Bob Davis, Joseph Wegas, myself, our good friend Steve Harrison. We're all going to be speaking about various topics that are Scottish Rite centric. The topic that I'll be speaking on is how the core values of the Northern Masonic jurisdiction of the Scottish Rite are similar to the values that one would find in someone who is a mature male. And I'll be talking about how these core values interact with male friendship, how they help form stronger male friendships, and I'll be talking about a little bit about also how they lead to mentoring other individuals and or how to become an intern like I am for somebody like Greg Knott. But in any case, that's what my presentation is going to be focused on, and I believe all the speakers have been announced, and their tickets obviously still available. I want to say that the early bird special just ended on those tickets, but you get 3 meals, I think 8 speakers, all in one day for, I think that the price now is maybe $125 to $150. The early bird special, I think, was $190 or $100. I would encourage anybody who's in the Chicago area or close by to try to make it. I think it's going to be a great day, and I'll just, quite frankly, awestruck by the amount of Masonic knowledge that's going to be in one area.
And so Darin has given his talk, or at least part of it, to a couple of our local lodges. And so I've got to hear it both times. And the way, at least he presented it in the Blue Lodge, he went through it, but then we had a discussion. And what was interesting was he presented it at Royal Arch and then presented it at Homer Lodge. The discussion kind of went different directions each time. And it was a few of the same brother, but not totally in the crowd. And I think that's what's cool about it, is that you can come up with a topic, in this case, the one Darin is presenting, and then you engage other people, and you just don't know where it's going to go. It's kind of like this podcast tonight. You know, we're throwing out some ideas and seeing where our conversation goes. The neat thing is, though, you're learning from other people. You're hearing their ideas. You're hearing things from them that maybe they wouldn't even normally share, because either the lodge meeting isn't conducive to that kind of a facilitated conversation, or the topic has just never come up. And so, Darin, I would be curious, what do you think of those conversations we've had, and you know, the fact that I think you presented those ideas, and it was, you know, somewhat some of the Masonic core values you were focusing on, or the Scottish Rite core values. And what were your thoughts those nights that you gave those presentations?
So for me, and this goes with any education that I present, the whole idea of why I write or why I give educational presentations is to get brothers thinking and to get, you know, hopefully them looking at subjects from maybe a different point of view or different reference point. So I'm always so pleased, especially with the guys we have at both Homer and Royal Arch, and as you said, a lot of those overlap. A lot of the guys there, I would say, probably aren't, I wouldn't say, are ones that are big into education, but they definitely support all our efforts there at Homer, whether it be through our Admiration chapter, our Royal Arch chapter there, or with Homer Lodge itself. And like I said, I think that the thing that pleases me the most or gives me the most joy is when I can get those conversations going and get the brethren to, you know, tell me their opinion. Whether they think I'm right or wrong is, you know, I don't have an ego. I don't take offense if they think that I'm wrong, but just getting the conversation going and just, you know, getting those ideas out and watching then the other brethren, you know, think about those topics that are thrown out in the conversation, adding their own input. That's the way that we learn about each other as brothers. And it really, 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 those are, to me, those are the best times I have in Freemasonry, to be quite honest, are those conversations that we have after an educational piece, whether it be one I give or somebody else gives.
Yeah. And so just like Bill, we talked about his progression of not realizing he could write in terms of being an author, and then he put all those pieces together. I've also watched Darin from the same aspect, that from coming into the Blue Lodge as a member, and I really don't even know how we got into education, or in terms of Darin, you being involved, but I knew you became involved with the Midnight Freemasons, and then you got a little bit deeper, you did some presentations, and it's just kind of evolved and steamrolled, and now Darin, one of his roles is the area education officer for the Eastern Area District of Illinois, Can Lodge. And so my point being is that it's funny how you can just start something and you do this, you do that, and then that, and all of a sudden you've just gained a lot of experience. You've gained confidence, you've gained skills. And I think it bodes well for one of the opportunities this fraternity offers, that when you join, you may not even know that's what you're going to end up wanting to do. But all of a sudden you just take advantage of the opportunities presented to you, and you just grow. And so I've watched Darin grow as a presenter to, somebody that used to just read off the slides, and now he doesn't. He's, presenting, he's giving a well-articulated talk. I think Darin's gifted in that. I think, at least my perception, Darin, is that writing comes fairly easy to you, and writing complex issues comes fairly easy to you, especially if you talk about esoteric and things like that. But yet, I think Darin has a unique talent to bring those esoteric, deep topics back to such a level that, the people at the Homer Lodge 199 can relate to them. And because, as you both know, with esoteric topics, you can go really deep, or you stay at that, surface level and try to get people in and say, oh, this is what that means, or this is how you relate to that symbol, or this saying, or whatever. So, Darin, that's how I've watched you grow, in addition to being my intern. But that's where I've seen you progress, is that ability to, express your ideas first in writing, and then you've started doing presentations, and then now you kind of hit the lecture circuit. So that's my observation, Darin.
Well, I appreciate that, Greg. I mean, quite frankly, I owe a lot of this to you, and we may joke about me being your intern, but you have been a mentor to me, and you are the one who encouraged me to write something for the Midnight Freemasons. And it's funny, with my 10-year anniversary, I've kind of been thinking about a question fellow Midnight Freemason contributor Randy Sanders asked about, well, what have you done in this past decade? And it's really kind of, it has made me to think a little about, my Masonic career thus far. And they're kind of like two halves. I'd say, from 2011 to maybe 2017, I didn't really do much. I went to Lodge. I'd show up for Scottish Rite. I think I had joined High 12 by that point, but I was active in going to meetings, so on and so forth. But I just read voraciously and everything I could get my hands on the topic of Freemasonry, and I think that that reading, in essence, prepared me to become a writer. But I would have never ever thought to be a writer without your encouragement, Greg. And one of the highlights of my life, honestly, was, and I recall we were on our way out to Washington to go to the 300th celebration that the Masonic Roundtable was having in June of 2017. And you mentioned to me that my article that my first article for Midnight Freemasons I had written as a guest contributor was featured on Whence Came You, and I was, blown away. I think I've told the story here when RJ was on, maybe not though, about being an avid fan of his podcast for a very long time. And this must have been 2015 or 16, because it was before I was involved with Midnight Freemasons. Didn't know RJ from Adam, but I saw him at a Starbucks there in Springfield prior to the Grand Lodge convocation. And I remember fangirling so hard, and I was like having this conversation with myself. Man, that's RJ, that's Robert Johnson. Should I go, tell him how much I love the podcast? And I'm like, no, he probably gets that all the time. I'll just leave him alone. And now, he's one of my, not only a Masonic inspiration, but I'd say a great friend of mine as well. So it's just funny how much has changed in a very short amount of time for me. But as I said, Greg, without your encouragement, none of this probably would have happened. So if anything, you were the match to ignite the powder keg.
Thank you. And I'll just leave it at that. Bill.
You know what's weird is that, I don't know about you guys, but when RJ reads something that you wrote for the Midnight Freemasons on Whence Came You, it's almost like that feeling like, you've made it when he does that. It's he just, he's done several of mine, but he just did it for, this last weekend, he read something of mine on the show, and it was just like, each time it's like, wow. He's read that. He's read my thing. Wow, that's cool. And then it's like you sit there listening. To me, it's like I don't even realize I wrote it. It's like, wow, that's like really good. But it's almost like, man, I feel like I really made it. Sort of like the singers say when they hear their songs played on the radio. That's always the way I feel is like when I hear RJ read a piece of mine on Whence Came You.
I agree with you, Bill. It's you feel vindicated in a sense that, or validated would be the better word. That, okay, at least two people read it, myself and RJ. And then when he's reading it over the air, it's like, okay, well, yeah, that didn't sound too bad, because.
And apparently it must have been good because otherwise he wouldn't have read it.
Right, exactly. Because some of those pieces, Darin's our editor for the Midnight Freemasons, and he never has enough material. And I know Bill and I are probably behind and giving stuff to him, but all of a sudden it's like, okay, let me just I know I got to get something out. It comes off the top of my head, I bang it out, and I'm like, I don't even know if it's grammatically correct or whatever. And I think Darin tweaks a little bit sometimes, but it's funny when RJ reads it, it's like, yeah, that didn't sound too bad at all. Didn't sound too bad. It almost made sense. So, yep, I think you're right, Bill.
Although this last piece of mine, I did kind of laugh because Darin tweaked mine. He says, I think I wrote something like, you normally won't go up and make an argument nothing about. And then I said, unless you're a politician, but that's a whole different story for a different time. But he changed it to, unless you're on social media. Well, that's probably a better idea to put that anyway.
Yeah. So.
Sometimes I have to protect myself from being the only incendiary writer on the blog, Bill. So, you're stop trying to take my job.
You're just afraid I'm going to mess up your Masonic jail cell.
Well, I'm just afraid that you're not going to be a good cellmate, and I'll have to shank you. So I'm just trying to keep you out of jail.
Well, I do appreciate that.
But I will say, speaking of the blog, since we're kind of talking about the blog, to date, Bill, that call of service article that you wrote back in August has 3,543 views. So I think you are, for the year, the most viewed article that we've had on the blog for 2021. So congratulations on that.
Wow, that's amazing. That is really amazing. Is the Points In, Points Out still the number one most read story we've ever had?
You know what? Give me a minute and I'll see if I can figure that out for you.
And for our listeners, Points In, Points Out was written by Todd Creason a number of years ago, and it was talking about which way do you wear your Masonic ring. Points in or points out, and it's kind of become a running joke in the Masonic social media circles about that. Though, Bill, you can see it posted sometimes, and either people are new and haven't been around to see the discussion. They'll get in there and get serious.
Well, and the funny thing is I'm just about ready to submit another story to Darin about that same thing, so he'll be tickled to see that here in a couple of weeks. But I have a new spin on it, though. Hopefully he'll be appreciative of that.
Okay, good.
I was going to say, I just looked up all time, the number one post on the blog with 127,000 views is the Skull and Crossbones and Freemasonry. You're doing it wrong. Points in or points out is 5th on the list.
Wow, we've had some more overtake it since the last time I heard.
Well, so I guess now, Darin, you've got me curious. What is the top 5 overall then?
So the top 5 are, as I mentioned, the Skull and Crossbones and Freemasonry. You're doing it wrong. And then Billy Graham, Freemason or Not. Ringling Brothers, The 6 Lost Aprons. Donald J. Trump, Freemason or Not. And Masonic Rings, Points In or Points Out.
Very interesting.
Those are the top 5. Yeah.
So probably our Google search engine friends, when people are looking, that's how they're ending up on some of those, I'm sure.
Well, I will say, since I get to edit through all the crazy comments we got, I know that the Billy Graham one is very popular for whatever reason. I don't know why, but there are people that insist to this day, regardless of what Todd wrote in his article, that Billy Graham was a Freemason, and that there's nothing that we could say to convince them otherwise, and that since we're Freemasons, we're just trying to protect the secret that he's also Freemason. And I'm obviously dumbing it down and making it much more tame than really some of the comments here are can be out there. So.
And I'm sure he was part of the illustrious Illuminati, too, so...
Oh, don't even get me started on those.
So there you have it, the top 5 posts in the history of the Midnight Freemasons. I want to thank all our listeners for their continued support, and if you feel particularly generous this holiday season, I'd ask that you go out to Patreon and support our program. It'll help us get better equipment, also help us deliver a fine quality product that we are hopefully delivering to you. Would also say that if you're interested in writing for the Midnight Freemasons blog, drop me an email, send me an article, let me know. We're always looking for new talent, and we're always encouraging those writers that are unknown as of now to become known. So please reach out to me and drop me a line. For Bill and Greg, I wish you a happy holiday season, and thank you for listening to another episode of Meet, Act, and Part.
Thank you for listening to Meet, Act, and Part. For more information about our show, visit our website at www.meetactandpart.com. While there, please consider supporting the show by sponsoring us on Patreon. Until we meet again, may we meet, act, and part.